Nope, there it goes. That I'm so absolutely horrible at which camera is it? That one. Okay. I'm guys, I want to tell you something. I'm really, really terrible at stream. I found out now that I'm hanging out with some other creators how terrible I am at streaming. I didn't know that studio mode existed. I really was raw dogging it this whole time in such a terrible way. And streams are about to get a little bit more fun, or I'm just not never gonna do it again. This is Cameron, Venus Siri, and this is Miss Crystal, top music attorney, and we're here in Arizona. Uh, I don't want to disclose where we are, should I? Is it?
Do you want
It's,
to give our address?
yeah. I'm not gonna give the address, but yeah, we're in a space. We're in a space she's familiar with in the desert. All right. So for anybody who doesn't know, um, Miss. Wait, is that who we could switch this one? There we go.
There we go.
Boom. Um, So we've all made content together in one way or another. Like we've all been on each other's streams and all that stuff. So I feel like anybody who watches my content frequently on this streaming channel, which is very few, kind of by design, I like having the tight knit community, is probably familiar with either one of these characters. All right. How are you doing?
I'm doing so great, thanks. Let me just take this from you. So today we're chatting about a few things, right? I feel like I need to try to see you a little bit. I'm gonna nudge. There we go. So actually, they came through town and were nice enough to hang out with me in my neck of the woods, and we thought we would just chat about things going on, music business, AI. So look, for those of you who are live watching, hello. Drop your questions in the chat, and that way, if we have some good questions that come through, we can incorporate you into this live stream, and with any luck, we'll get a little weird. Those are my thoughts.
Here, since your voice is the way it is, let's put the microphone like out here.
Howdy doody, buckaroonies. How y'all doing out there? I'm ready to get some Long John Silvers and some butter and answer some questions. And yeah, what are we talking about? Mostly like platform ownership, I think was kind of the hot button issue of the moment with the TikTok getting banned for 11 straight hours or something like that. I don't think it lasted very long. But yeah, that's a thing that happened, and that's a thing that's really important to know about is as you move forward in the music industry in 2025 and beyond, you're very much reliant on social media platforms as your device and impetus for your career and how you navigate literally everything, because that's how you get discovered anymore, so to speak, by designing something of value for other people to then utilize you for, not unlike a prostitute, but in a little bit of a different way, because that's what we do with our time. And in TikTok's case, I think we all saw people screaming and crying and freaking out because they were, I mean, literally overnight losing everything they had built for how long has TikTok been around?
And we
A
would have been.
while. Yeah, we would have been too. Yeah, yeah. I mean, my TikTok was down. I don't know what happened with it, but hopefully it's still there. I don't know. And yeah, I think that's an important thing to open up with the discussion here because that could happen to YouTube or Spotify or whatever else people are on now. Red Note, right? Is that what we're all on now?
I'm
Seriously.
not. I think an interesting point that I have not seen many people make about the TikTok ban is it is so it from what I've seen, and I could be wrong because I'm not a security expert, but from what I'm seeing from people trying to decompile and do a forensic privacy investigation on the app itself, they've seen, I feel like I'm saying the word obfuscate a lot, but they've seen that TikTok has very much intentionally obfuscated where and how it's sending information. And it's been doing it in a very, yeah, like it seems like a pretty severe way, as much so as if I decided to make a little video sharing app and put it on the Apple App Store and on the Google Play Store, it would immediately, upon that sort of information coming out, immediately get banned or suspended until that has been corrected. And that's a good thing because you're paying Apple and Google Play 30% of every damn transaction to provide you that security blanket. And somehow they've not been doing that with TikTok, and meaning that the government, apparently had to step in and do something about it, which is a different fact. I don't agree with that either. But uh, what's interesting is that, do you use iPhone, Apple,
Android.
Android? Okay. I guess, who is anybody in this room a TikTok user? Wow, that's kind of rare. Okay, so viewers, if you use TikTok, let's say you use TikTok on an iPhone and you use it as much as some of the people in my life use TikTok, which is constantly all the time. Um, what you would end up with is somebody who who has this app that Apple suspended because of security concerns, and then people would not be patient and they wouldn't say, "Oh, I care about my security. It's a good thing they did that." They would just go buy an Android and they would leave the platform or begin to leave the platform, which would, you know, eventually bleed a lot of money and a lot of the sort of walled garden stronghold that they have. And so it's kind of interesting because I do think that the way that the government should have handled this, if I were king of America, is I would have just had an antitrust lawsuit against Apple and Google Play Store for their. When you look at what happened with Fortnite, for example, it's a big enough app to where there was some leniency in a lawsuit rather than just dropping Fortnite from the App Store. Any
That's interesting. Okay, so but practically, this is what I've been thinking of. I go back to the YouTube thing. For each of us, we have a YouTube channel, and for each of us, we spend a lot of time to grow that channel to a certain size. And so, I personally, my biggest platform is not TikTok. And so for me, having the ban come up, seeing it coming, I wasn't one of the people that was going on the platform and being quite distressed, right? But I go, if it had been YouTube, that's a whole different scenario. And I go, that's really scary. That's really scary when we actually do rely on these different platforms for our audiences because it's, it's gone. And so, we've seen this happen with, for example, MySpace. And so with the TikTok situation, and it still might be going away. Okay, that vertical for someone who relies on it for their entire business, that the practical takeaways, you need to take ownership of your audience to really build an email list, or if you like to do texting, get people to opt in. But you have to go through these steps, and what I like to do, I call it audience harvesting. And so if you ever pop on a live stream, for example, this is on a couple different places, but when you're doing a live stream, to literally cultivate your audience and say, hey, this is the place that I have my little email list, go sign up right now. And then I was getting great tips, before we did this, on other ways to get people to sign up on your email list, but to really, take this as a lesson that if you are trying to build something, you're an entrepreneur, you're a business owner, take the time to, take ownership of your audience. And then number two, for your usernames, right? Always make sure you have a presence on all social media platforms. I think diversifying for me is, you know, you can't not do it. You have to diversify on social media, every single platform. And at the minimum, make sure you own your username. Don't have someone else go and take your username. And so, what I think anyone watching this right now could do is, for any new platform, Blue Sky, what was it, Red Note? Well, uh, for whatever it is, just go and grab the username, even if you don't plan on actually posting on those platforms. So those are practical things I would do. Like in the wave of everything we just saw happen, go execute on that, and you can kind of protect yourself on the next whatever happens.
Just a short thing. You can, if you just search around long enough. One thing that I did with X, and I learned my lesson with X. I learned this the hard way because X, in my subjective opinion, became a propaganda tool for a right-wing administration very quickly. And I realized by having an account on here with however many tens of thousands of followers, anything that I put on there is giving money or is get in some way supporting what was going on with the platform. Like there was no way to really leave that, and I had to make the hard decision being like, I have to give up this platform or I have to constantly have that nagging feeling in my stomach, and I give it up. But the way that I did it is I got a web scraper to delete every single tweet, but it and every single reply and every single like and every single thing after downloading all my content, and then left my you could still see my account, you could still see my followers, which I'm sure has dropped since then. But I feel like that's actually a pretty healthy way of doing it because you can still have that placeholder. You still have and it also sends a message. Like, because people see a bunch of missing things, and then when they click it, they see that everything's gone, and they see a message where I'm saying, "F this platform," and I feel like that's actually a pretty decent way. But yeah, but it made me learn to diversify.
I think on the note of diversification, one thing I've learned a lot over the years was, especially with YouTube, you can think of being a YouTuber or whatever as your thing. And that's fine to an extent, but you also have to understand the degrees of value you're able to provide from what you do instead of just posting YouTube videos. Because, I mean, obviously in your case, you're like a super smart lawyer and speak words good and stuff, and you're a science doctor or something. And that's something you can do outside of these platforms. And I think people don't think about growth outside of a more like myopic standpoint a lot of the times. Like, I want to get big in music, so I'm going to go on social media and post my music or whatever on social media. Like, let's be real, no one cares about music on social media. You're just going to end up posting memes and skits or something that elevates you to the top of the algorithm with engagement. Then you kind of segue into check out my original whatever. But I think people don't take that far enough. I think the transaction and idea of the business plan tends to stop at like, look at this thing I've created, and it doesn't really have a ton of value anymore. And I think that's a really important question to ask yourself is like, outside of the thing I really truly enjoy, if you want to build a career in this, especially in an industry that is so dominated by social platforms that can just disappear overnight, what else can you add to that recipe to build your own circle and build up something that's useful outside of that platform? In my case, as I'm sure a lot of you know, things like Decent Sampler, I take a ton of time to go build sample instrument libraries and put them together and write really good code and make them really useful. And then I give them away to people because then if YouTube goes away and everything else is gone, I still have my sample instrument business going for me. I have a lot of sound design contracts. I have a lot of scoring work I can do. And all of that came from YouTube. I think, in fairness, like having a large channel really helped open up a lot of doors to do these things. And I think to build that large platform took a lot of work to do creative and interesting things and really push myself as an artist on some level. But then you have to vector that into doing something that's really valuable outside of just posting a really funny TikTok once a day or however many times you're supposed to post on every platform. I mean, even right now, my last video was, well, I just posted a video like a day ago, but before that was like 2 months ago, something like that. And that is bad YouTubing. Like, I'm an awful YouTuber, but I'm allowed to do that. I'm allowed to do that and spend as much time as I want making something that I feel is of quality that represents my ideas because I've diversified enough away from all these platforms and I'm not just screaming that like, oh no, Spotify dropped their payouts again, so now I'm not going to have any money to eat this month, or oh no, someone posted a YouTube video, like a really popular YouTuber posted a video where they did something stupid. Now everybody's pulling ads away from YouTube, so now I don't make any money. Not that YouTube makes money at all anyway, but I think that's a incredibly important idea. And I think something you could probably clarify is the importance of protecting these ideas and how do you, legitimize yourself to that end. And I think owning the name on every platform is huge as well, even if you don't intend to engage. But there's a lot of other things that go into, establishing your, not like intellectual property, that's probably the wrong word, but
No,
like your ideas as a business.
just yeah, like just I have very weird views about intellectual property, and I would in a perfect world that we would be monetizing creators, not through these little idea credits that we sell based on 19th century law. But yeah, no, I think that Crystal's point is and your point are both very valid. Where I mean, any financial advisor is going to tell you to diversify, and you're kind of talking about the exact same thing. Um, so, did you have a Tik? Yeah, you actually had a TikTok account, like one that you fed. I quit. I made on TikTok. I made a video of my ducks
Oh
eating,
yeah.
slurping up a bunch of duck feed, and it got millions and millions of views and likes. And it was like, I mean, it was kind of like on the main algorithm of the platform, and I got paid nothing. And I said,
Did you get
I'm
followers from it?
Oh yeah, but I got a thing saying like you didn't have this many followers before the thing came out, and I said, cool, I'm not going to give you content anymore. Like, but yeah, that was just sort of my. I was like, all right, I already hate this. The algorithm doesn't work for me. Like, I've never gotten addicted to TikTok. I've always just been like, and so that was sort of the end of it to me for me. But I definitely I know a lot of people who's were like terrified to like because that's their main thing. Like they people literally businesses that like use TikTok for leads and now it's gone. And it's very difficult to like have a conversation about Russia banning Facebook and being like, wow, that really sucks. And it's like in Russia the government's the Kremlin's communication to citizens is not we're banning Facebook because we're mean and you suck. It's because they're saying, oh, because of security or because the West is using it to do this to us, and the people, and you have this half of people that support it, and it's scary stuff. But yeah, it hits us in the gut. Um, so what is your next form of content that you're working on? What can we look forward to? Unless you have something to continue with this.
I was gonna say one other little thought on that. Here's the thing. For last year, one of the games that I played and that I thought was really important is in the diversification realm, going and doing the volume game and being like, I think that the average person on social media will just use one app a day. If you have a tendency towards you like TikTok, you're on TikTok. You're typically not going to jump around. So one of the arguments might be, well, if I'm repurposing the same piece of content, the same 9 by 16 video, and putting it everywhere on Reels and Facebook and TikTok, YouTube Shorts, I'm which by the way, I predicted last year. I go, YouTube was favoring the shorts for creators because it wanted to compete. So this was the place to really get the word out, especially if you're a musician, try to promote yourself. So I just said, look, I'm about the game of volume. Let's get as many people as humanly possible to see your content. And so even if it's the same piece of whatever, post it everywhere, every single day. And so that's what I did. So we were posting something like, 28 pieces of content per day across my social media because I have Myth Crystal, which is my artistic music stuff. I have Top Music Attorney, which is my music education. Then I have my law firm, which is Delgado Entertainment Law. And so for us, I go, yes, I'm coming up with different types of stuff, but I can recycle. And so it became this beautiful little art form of just binge posting and then just being like, so what? And I just want to make a note of that because, there's this anxiety that we all have of like, why do I want to do it? Because then I have to see someone's comment and then I have to see, I have to be exposed to someone else and I have to play a game and, it's really hard. And so my mission for myself and then for, I put this out into the world for this year is to get into a mentality of shorts, get into a mentality of like stories. So the way you post in your stories is very easy breezy. You don't really think about it too much, right? Because you know it's going to disappear. And
Yeah.
so you go, I feel an ease in my content creation. I go, imagine if we could all do it that way. And you're like your cute little duck. I just wanted to show that. That was something that really appealed to people, and that's why it went viral. And so I go for this year, even for myself, because I say it, but then it comes to me being ugly as hell in front of the gym, about to go in. I just wanted to share something, and I watch it back. I'm like, am I am I really going to post this? And so going through the mentality of if this was a story, I would have. If it's a story and I would have, then I'm gonna, and there we go. And so I'm trying to now do a volume game of trying to just post stuff that's authentic because I think we all filter. And I think that's something where we can compete and win if we're trying to really like grow on social media. Who can be the most authentic because it's the hardest thing to do. So that's what I'm excited about for this year. And, for last year, something else I was looking at was like, do spiral, post everywhere. And I go, you know what? I think in the same thing, YouTube did really well. You guys have really successful YouTube channels, and maybe you haven't, done as much for your social media because you're like, why would I?
Yeah.
It's a logic game. And we do know why you should, because you know what? You are going to appeal to an entirely different demographic of people who are not wanting to sit there and watch your 10-minute video, respectfully.
Right.
And so, we are supposed to be thinking about our audience. We're supposed to be, what value can we put out to the world? So if we think about that with social media, then our behaviors change a little bit.
One thing that I was kind of excited at first about YouTube Shorts because it was like a connection to the long form videos that was, whereas on TikTok or Instagram, I mean, you can't even link off Instagram.
Yeah.
Like you can't even like click a link to be like, watch this longer video. You have to literally like type in this. And so, with YouTube Shorts, I was pretty excited about that. But interestingly enough, I found I even hired an editor. That was the only time I've ever hired an editor for my channel. An editor to basically cut things into shorts. Somebody who's used to that type of format. And because there's a lot of videos of mine where I like have a little rant, and it's like, okay, this is really good short content. You could just cut it down. Um, what I could be wrong. You're always there's a level of superstition with algorithm prediction or trying to figure out what's happening with especially something that new because like the shorts algorithm when it first came out I'm sure they're still trying to figure out how aggressive or unaggressive they want it to be. What I feel like I was noticing is people were watching the shorts of mine that took off. People were watching them and then they would go click to watch a big percentage of them would then be, oh, I want to learn, I want to see what context this was in, but they're fine tuned to be watching short form content, and so then they would click off of the long form content much quicker just because that's not what they watch, and then the YouTube algorithm for the long form content would say, this video is not really doing as well because people are clicking off right away, and I thought to myself, hmm, YouTube's smarter than that. Like these algorithm engineers are smarter than that. And I actually reached out to someone from YouTube and mentioned that, and they said, "Ooh, that's a possibility." And I said, "Oh, you're not smarter than that. You're literally just playing games until something works out better," which was kind of, but yeah. So the thing is, I do like short form content a little bit more now, and I've been doing it on like Instagram, but it's almost like I'm scared to have it to have anything to do with YouTube, and I want those two things to be a little bit more separated, which just requires more of my time, which then asks like, when can I make music?
And I Yeah, weirdly enough, I did really, really well on shorts and Instagram reels. And I think a lot of it is just like my type of format and just being an effective storyteller, especially in like a 60-second supercut, whatever. And I kind of dialed in the format to do that. And I did a couple that did over 1 million, and a lot of others did hundreds and hundreds of thousands of views, which is awesome on the surface level. But then I also found that there was very little crossover between that and like long form content, because the people who knew of me on other platforms, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, when I posted on TikTok and it would do well, I would get a lot of comments like, "Oh, you're the mustache guy from YouTube. I love your videos." And then on YouTube, it would do well, and I would gain, 1,000 subscribers from this one, 10,000 from this one, and so on. And I think when I looked at it, I want to say last year I gained, or maybe it was the year before, but whatever. It was like 50,000 subscribers from shorts, like the shorts feed specifically. And I really couldn't correlate that into anything that boosted my long form content, because it did almost exist of like, cool, I gained 50,000 new subscribers that only care about this very specific format that does just eat into my time, because then you just get that lizard brain of like, what's my content strategy? And it's like, yeah, I want to make music and stuff instead of like, like I want to put a lot of effort into polishing these really, you know, well edited long form videos and whatever. And that eats up a ton of time. Like my videos will easily eat up like 100+ hours. And I'm sure yours, especially with like the research and stuff, can just be massive, like month long, multi-month long efforts. Or I'm sure in your case, there's a lot of just tedious research that goes through it. And I just I couldn't find the benefit to feeding into the short form thing without like directly linking off into something else. And most of the platforms removed the ability to do that, because YouTube Shorts actually did let you link
Yeah.
for like a month. And it was really useful because I would post things and I would have my link to like the patron program, or like a free sample pack I made with like a dirty dish rag or whatever I was posting a video about. And then they killed that. And then it was like, okay, well, now what am I doing with these? Because views and subscribers are great if you care, but beyond that, it was like, what am I gleaning from this? Like, I'm not pulling these people into my ecosystem whatsoever, and I'm just getting like vanity metrics. And I think that's something we way overvalue.
One thing you could consider is just you would need to make this part of your business model.
Oh, gonna so
You'd have to make it part of the business model, but you would have someone to harvest leads from your socials. That's what it is. If you have 50,000 and you do a post talking about, something that you're selling, and you go reply this word if you're interested in this product, and then you message, and then you get someone to actually have a conversation and send them a link to make a purchase for something. So you have to be very intentional. That's what it is. You go, this traffic was happening, but now there wasn't a way to actually get that to go somewhere. So you can do it by actually having a person to actually, engage those people, or the call to action, which is, go to the link in my bio and stuff like that, which is harder versus if you're having a conversation. So that's one thing to think about. But you're right. I mean, if you're going to put in the time and effort, it needs to make sense. Just because it's a shiny little, you know, silver thing doesn't mean you have to go do it. If it doesn't work into the funding that's coming into your company based on the current business model, doesn't mean you have to do it. It's an option. But I think that that's, as a business owner, you could think about that, and just to be like, this is something that perhaps is untapped. 50,000 is a lot.
Right. Well, yeah, it's like end of the day, to some degree, it's always like, oh, boohoo, I got 4 million views and 50,000 subscribers or whatever. But It is funny too, because sometimes you do have to think of that as like it is part of a broader content strategy, so to speak. But it's also funny how much that does affect the nature of the content itself and what you're getting into it for. Like you said with the stories, I want to share something interesting, and there is that where you know I did one where there was just like my kitchen sink was dripping, so I just like sampled it and turned it into a free instrument, whatever, and that was just kind of a fun story thing. But that was a huge amount of work, and it is just like a time versus return, and I think a lot of it's like sunk cost fallacy of like, oh, I spent 20 hours doing this. Why would I continue doing that when it didn't really like play into anything beyond like, wow, look at me, everybody. I farted and turned it into a convolution reverb.
Well, so two things back just to close off on the algorithm thing. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with saying this on a stream, but Wonder Boy, for example, Stephen Thompson, the UFC fighter. I mean, a UFC fighter having a YouTube channel with his level of energy and his level of content. He makes content. All of it's really, if especially if you're into fighting. Anybody who's watching this, if you're even remotely interested in martial arts or UFC or anything like that. His content is extremely educational. He literally shows you things that like you would have to pay a lot of money for karate, and he's one of the best instructors in the world, and he does it from his own gym. And every now and then you might see me on there. He gained a ton of subscribers from short form content and I was like, wow, and that's kind of what made me get excited about YouTube Shorts.
Mm,
Is I was like, oh wow, okay, he's gaining tons of subs from this. More so that it was the biggest pool of subs that he's had, but the video views were staying the same
mm,
and even dropping in some cases, maybe due to my little conspiracy that I just mentioned about the clicking off of a long form video messing with the algorithm. And in his case, he often has like DraftKings as a sponsor, which is, a very valuable sponsor to have. If in that world, it would be very weird for us to have DraftKings as a sponsor. But everybody in this chat here is very picky about sponsors or doesn't work with them at all. But every video he makes, that's what you're paying. You're going to watch a thing about DraftKings if you want a literal headline UFC fighter to teach you something and spend a couple days making a video for it. It's fair enough, and there's no shame in it, I guess. But when the views actually go down a little bit, when the views don't grow with the subscriber growth, then it's like, well, that's not very good for business at all. Which then brings me to this other thing, where what you were saying about where you have that sunk cost fallacy. Um, like probably sadly, anytime I've done in the last couple of years, anytime I've had that sort of Q&A thing at NAM
mm.
or something, or when, because the number one question that all of us probably get is what is how do I make a living off music? How do I do this? And my question is always like, why do you need to? Like
Yeah.
I say that from like a very privileged place, having made a living off music for the last 2 decades, but like also like in a lot of those cases, making a living off music really hurt my desire to make music at times. And I learned that very quickly and started. That's why I'm here on a YouTube channel right now. Like that's entirely because I realized that the purest feeling, not to get all nin, the the purest form of making music was when I was like 16, staying up all night, making it, knowing that, someone may never ever listen to it. And so I guess like a lot of times it's also like the business side of music is abysmal at the moment.
Yep.
Like I would never, if somebody was like I was thinking about being a musician or getting a job at a restaurant, I almost, if I was like in money for like for making money and like living, don't be a musician. Are you crazy? Go work at the restaurant. Go work long hours for nothing at the restaurant. You will make more, almost certainly make more than you'll make off of music. But if you like being a musician and you love being a musician, sometimes I don't think there's any shame in just saying, okay, I love being a musician. Charlie Cooper from Telephone Tel Aviv, the late Charlie Cooper, he had a restaurant he had a restaurant. He had a job serving tables at a really nice restaurant in Chicago, and they were just he was touring the world at the time. He had albums out, and he just did that because it like relieved the stress of, oh, I have to make an album that has a hit on it, or oh, I have to get this many gigs, and it didn't. And that's why Telephone Tel Aviv is so amazing sounding. It's one of the reasons is because he didn't have that sort of monetization energy, even back this before social media, just because he waited tables for a living and he was lucky enough to find a job that let him take time off when he went on tour, and the tour paid for itself and then some. But yeah, it was like that was really inspiring to me, was like also being like, doesn't have to be a business if you really love making music. Sometimes you want to guard these things from capitalism. Like you don't want to have to, you kind of want to be like, no, no, this is my baby. You don't get to dictate or influence the direction it goes in based on how much money it's making.
And
Any,
I think there's something interesting to that too, and I'd like to get your take on this just because your channel exists in a very different kind of space than what Ben and I do. But to that end, when you get that restaurant job and whatever, I think to some degree, kind of like you said, your music just ends up better because you're not placing as much emphasis on like, oh, I need everything to be important. I need to write the album of the year. I need to make a bunch of money. And I think YouTube's pretty similar in that every video kind of feels like it needs to be your most successful video yet. And I think YouTube really reinforces that idea. And a lot of other social platforms do too, of like the analytics dashboard is always like the next thing you can click on as a creator to see how you're doing. How did it do compared to this? How are you doing compared month over month, year over year? But it's something we kind of talked about recently, Ben, was the idea of just the less you care about something in terms of like the performance, the better it just kind of natively ends up doing. And I found that that was a really true record for my own growth on YouTube, where when I got away from like synth reviews and tutorials and kind of the generic stuff and was like, I'm just going to do what I want, it, it tends to do really, really well. And even my last video I put out just the other day was like, I was not really confident in that video as like an algorithm performer. I just really liked the idea and the video, and I thought it came together really nicely. And it's like one of my better performing videos. And that was just, it was an interesting relationship change dynamic to look at the performance of it and go, huh, that's nice, I guess. And then just like, I'm already mentally moved on to the next thing. But have you found that to be true as well when you're not trying to use it solely as like a business driving thing where there is like a native uptick in the performance of everything because you're not like death gripping it as like a capitalist perspective. Just
Yeah,
like
and
do well.
that's the rule though across the board, not just for YouTube videos, for social media. And this goes back to what I said. I'm calling it being authentic. People are so much smarter than everyone treats them. We can see through what you are posting and that you were trying. So for example, even if you mean very well, right? The beginning of my channel, crickets as far as viewership, and it was trying so hard to say this is the most educational thing. Here are the 5 tips to help you with your contract and protecting yourself.
Wait, those weren't really the 5 best tips for bass players?
So, although well intended, it didn't do well. And I think that really the progression with my channel was when I just kind of truly became the most authentic version of myself as a lawyer, and that how I literally speak about issues or convey, the lesson. So, the as they call it, the vitamin in the brownie. You can share something, you can do it in a way that's kind of entertaining. And then if you can truly find your authentic self, which takes time. I don't know how many videos you guys had to do before you started to feel a little more comfortable in front of the camera, and you might still not today. But that comes through. And what you were talking about as far as like, you not being able to make 6 figures from your music career doesn't make you a loser. You having a day job whilst you are pursuing your music career is okay. And in fact, what I realized for myself in starting my record label, when I started my label, starting my law firm, like all the things I've just started for myself, I did it out of a place of frustration. But then what I realized is I go, well, if I think like a record label, then I can make myself a big star. Right? And what does that mean? I get better streams on Spotify. I can have people go and purchase my shirt and come to my show. It's this idea that you can build something ancillary to what your passion is. So if the passion is making the music, what else can you do around that passion to make money? And each of you have figured that out to some degree. I have figured that out to some degree. I started an entertainment law firm, not because I was like, hey, cool, I want to be an entertainment lawyer. I actually didn't. I just said I can actually help people. And it's ancillary to the thing I truly do love, which is making music, which is making art. And then it's the thing that helps me now pay for what I do. So, and I thought back to one of my clients. I represent a lot of legacy acts. I represent heirs to different things. And I was thinking of a family that I represent to a very famous tennis player. And he, played tennis and he had an incredible career. And he said, which has stuck with me forever, he said his tennis career paid for his race car passion. And I'm like, I think to a degree that's so true for all of us. So it's
Yeah, I had a violinist that made a living as a violinist, and a decent one. I am Greg Hurt, and he's on my albums. I toured with him all the time, and like 10 years after meeting him, we were like at a cafe or something in the middle of the night, and I remember just randomly, I was like, "Yeah, but I mean, we both get to make a living as a musician." He was like, "I wanted to be a scientist. I hate this," and I was like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yeah, I mean, it's fun sometimes, but like." This isn't what I want to do with my life. This sucks. And I'm like, you are literally living like the dream. We're on tour right now, man. Like we're making money doing it. And he's just like, nah, this is literally like I just played violin as a kid and then got gigs and ended up in this hell of a job. And I was just like, okay, but he still expressed himself doing it. Um, so like one thing that yeah, I mean, I respect that the way that you're able to I guess make everything seem a little bit more tangible with monetizing things differently. It's honestly respectable to hear. Um,
So I've just got to like legally blonde all this, and then I'll be set. Is that kind of the vibe?
Yeah, no, someone asked a question earlier in the live stream. So to kind of bring it all around, because we were talking about social media handles, names, so all that intellectual property, 1,000%. Your name on YouTube is your trademark. If someone else, comes and uses it, if it's the exact same thing, if it's something confusingly similar, you go and you hire a lawyer to go and deal with that to get a federal trademark registration. But here's the thing that gets missed. For the content creators who do truly put their social media clips online and make money. I have all kinds of clients who do this, right? Who are influencers. Man, like having your ducks in a row with your trademark registrations, with your copyright registrations, it makes my life easy. Because then there's all kinds of things set up with systems in Facebook, in Meta, in TikTok, so that we can issue takedowns. So, yeah, actually taking the step to do the thing is what we're talking about today. Execute, figure out a way to sell something, get people's attention, be consistent. But then what I do is the backbone of, let's say, legally protected contracts, intellectual property rights. And all that is really important.
Communication. No, communication almost vigilante communication is something that I got really into as well. If anybody who I've played festivals with, they'll either tell you that, oh, Ben, yeah, he didn't talk to anybody and he was just like drinking whiskey and eating Doritos in the corner, or they'll say he awkwardly came into the backstage area and asked everybody how much they were being paid and told everybody how much he was being paid, and it created this really awkward situation because like. And surprisingly, you'd find that like somebody who I was opening for got paid 2 grand less than I did, and they'd be like, "Hey, what the hell? Like, that doesn't make any sense." And then the next time they had a gig, they'd find out how much they were
Oh,
worth.
you got confidentiality in your
Right.
contract.
Yeah. But I mean, same thing with sponsors. I'm always, yeah, like meeting with Patrick Boyle, one of my favorite YouTubers, and I was so happy to meet him the other night. And yeah, like first thing, I'm just like, all right, here's how much these people paid, how much you get, we just talked that. And
We
now,
talk about that all the time. Like,
right, and now everybody knows like how much they're worth because uh, yeah, if a sponsor hits you up to like sponsor a video, they're not going to like tell you how much you're worth. They're just going to like pay you as little as they possibly can. And they're trained to do that. They'll give you a number and that Phil Mora just did it with
yeah,
you.
yeah,
Literally,
right.
like they just keep giving you new numbers every single time that you met. You can say, no, I'm not interested in the sponsorship. And they'll be like, $2,000.
Yeah,
And you're just
my
like,
offer went up by eight. What was it? Yeah, my offer went up by $800 for not replying for 6 hours,
yeah.
and it was
Um,
insane.
and so what was the offer for? They wanted 60-second ad
I
read or
think like
90
just an
second
ad read. Yeah,
an ad read? Okay, so for to give you an example, so they're offering your channel $1,200 in the opening for a 60-second ad read. Ground News for my bot video paid that earned around $20,000 that I ended up giving to Ukraine because the channel's a nonprofit. I can't just like pocket that and be like, but yeah, that earned about $20,000 for UNICEF Ukraine. Um, just for that video, and that shows you that that's like literally 15 times more money than they were offering you. We have very similar channels and view
yeah,
counts. It's like absolutely ridiculous how much money is kept. And like and also same thing too is like when I talk to the brands themselves, I'm like, how many middlemen are there between you and the actual company I'm working for? Because I was talking to somebody straight from Ground News, but like with any sort of booking or anything like that, it's always so important to find out how many middlemen. I'm not sure that I'm not sure that I can legally say this on stream or like how safe it would be to say this on stream, but I've been doing a thing where I've been getting offers on buyouts for my catalog. and finding out how that works. And a couple companies that just reach out to me because private equity is just trying to own everything in the world right now and rent it back to you. A couple different companies reached out to me saying, "Hey, we buy music catalogs. We're very interested in having yours. Send us all your stats and all your plays on, and we're going to figure that out. And our accountant will let us know how much what our offer can be." And then, without telling me, they're acting as a broker and shopping it out to other and like part of me, I'm like, that has to be that's unethical, but that has to be illegal. Like a part in some state that has to be illegal to not tell somebody that you're brokering on their behalf. But that's like a great example. And like I've asked them, I'd be like, and that I got you said because like basically some of the people who buy the catalogs would be like, hey, somebody reached out to us on your behalf, and I'm like, oh no, they told me that they were just going to offer it to me and then never got back to me, and okay, so anyway, point being is I've asked them now if somebody talked to me about them, like how many are you going to broker it? I'm like, how many middlemen are there between the person who's actually spending the money on this? And they can't even tell you. They won't give you an answer because communication, it's so normalized to not have communication. But the biggest, circling back to where we started here, um, that sort of thing where like people feel like they're not as much of a musician because they're not making a living for it. The conspiratorial part of my brain thinks that that's like the same energy that like it has a workplace and they're like, don't ever, it is so rude to talk about how much you're being paid at this, but don't do that. You'll hurt their feelings if they find out that you're making more than they do. And it's like there's a very good reason why they're telling everybody to do that. Like it's not that it's actually like uncool to do it. um anyway, so yeah, I feel like there is some energy of that in the entertainment industry where they're like, don't talk about how much you're being paid and always act like you're a professional musician, act like you're bigger than you are. And it's like, well, yeah, that way nobody gets any damn money.
There's something to that. I think there's something to that in representing yourself as something professional, right? That's part of the whole thing. Like a record label, don't pitch something for TV and film consideration and have a shitty email address that's Yahoo. If you have something that has more professional in presentation, it's just going to be taken more seriously. Here's the thing: the power of lawyer letterhead. Okay, a lot of what I do is I send scary demand letters. Okay. And I go, hey, you did this thing. Here's the law. This is what's going to happen if you don't comply with our demands. It is a lot more powerful because it is coming from a lawyer on lawyer letterhead.
Yeah.
Okay. Power of persuasion. So it goes to just, people and how you present yourself with your own businesses. If you're an entrepreneur, take these things and consider them. Now, to your point, you go, well, I said, hey, person, company interested in buying my music catalog. I'm interested in selling. They then jump around to a bunch of different companies and they're trying to procure offers. That's not okay. 1,000% that's not okay. And the reason why is because they do not have your authority. They are breaching the contract that they had with you. Okay. They did not have the authority to act as your representative in that capacity. So anything they go and they execute, that can be voided. So you have all kinds of recourses, right, under the law. But to your point, people just go and do stuff.
And sometimes you gotta send them a scared hair for it. It was like
That's
when
right.
I dyed my hair red and showed up at my house with a baseball bat, right?
Yeah, right. No, and then on the fees, I'll be clear as the negotiator in our little family here. I did get paid the most for this, appearance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
We can
okay.
be honest.
um yeah, in that we came to your, yeah, we paid more in gas money to get here, I guess that would be like we lost less. uh yeah. Another oddly enough, with my YouTube channel, I have errors and emissions insurance, which I started doing once I was like, okay, I'm gonna start doing content that's a little bit more, not, I don't want to say edgy because I'm not trying to be edgy, but I guess like honest, right? And so it's like, okay, if I'm going to be honest, then I have to have like insurance because you can't just be honest and not get sued all the time. And it is quite amazing how. I mean, errors and emission insurance is not cheap, but it is quite amazing how I'll get these sort of threatening language letters, it's you just file a claim. You're just like, okay.
Let me ask this. Because here's the thing: if someone gets a demand letter from a lawyer,
Yeah.
it's scary.
Mhm.
I don't know if you remember your first time.
Yeah.
It was probably not good. You know what I'm saying? But after so many times, you become a little bit numb to it because it's a whole lot of just threatening. So it's been interesting for me dealing with people either I represent or people on the other side who it's a tactic now. It becomes about psychology. So let me ask you, after receiving all the demands that you receive, are you scared when you get them anymore? Or are you more like, "Psh, whatever?"
Um, no, so one thing that I do, and this is there's a lot of YouTubers who are larger than I am who don't do this, and I am appalled that they don't do it, is I follow just basic journalist principles. If I'm making a video saying something that could potentially be damaging to a person or brand, I have to contact them to let them know and get their comment. Like that is just ethics in journalism. You have to do that. Like, and that's just ethics in general. Like, because they may have a piece of information that changes everything. They also almost certainly are full of shit and will tell you whatever it takes. But you know, if you're clever enough to make the piece and you're clever enough to actually let them defend themselves before making it live. So that's a big one. No, I mean, I feel like I was a little bit unrattled. I made a video on New York Times journalist Ian Urbina, um, tried to scam me and scammed thousands of musicians. And it was one of my first bigger videos. And and I mean legitimately scammed thousands, like didn't tell them what he was doing and just made tons of money off of their music and used the New York Times his New York Times email address when doing it, posing as a New York Times journalist when it had nothing to do with the New York Times, had nothing to do with any of that. It was just his own, he was promoting a book that he wrote and then, you know, saying that it was going to be released in the New York Times, but it wasn't. Um, and of course, I got legal threats over that, and that rattled me a lot and cost me money and stuff. I got there was one event. I guess. Well, I guess is on my chest. I could swear. Tell you how everything went. There was one event. I'm not going to name any names. Some people watching this will understand what it is. They'll remember it. There's one event in 2023 where fans of a particular product were very angry. Well, to start things off, Sweetwater really just stepped out of line and they demanded I apologized for a mistake that they essentially made. And I publicly, very publicly, with hundreds of retweets and everything, told them to suck my dick. And it created this whole, you know, whole thing. Sweetwater was actually cool about it. They did it. No, I'm joking. They Sweetwater, no, but I mean they actually they come out and they're like, oh, whoa, 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 okay, hold on. This is we're both professionals in this business. Let's cool things down. And they more or less made it right and it's fine. There was a smaller product. They had a Discord server. They were very mad that I didn't mention their particular product and thing. And I made the mistake of going on the Discord server and having a conversation and trying to cool things out and be like, hey, look, this is why I did this. It doesn't work like that when there's a pile-on and people are mad. They just yell at you, you get more mad. They insulted, you know, they kind of publicly insulted a friend of mine who, like, I was just pretty emotional, pretty tired and somebody asked me, demanded that I apologize, and I said, "Hey, if you demand that I apologize, I'm going to tell you the exact same thing I told Sweetwater." And it turned out that this was a woman. Turned out that this person took it a little bit further than I meant it to take, and it actually was it picked up steam, and this got reported to a bunch of different companies, and then I had to sit through HR meetings, and I had to actually get an attorney, and it cost me well, like 5 or 6 grand in legal fees to deal with this completely, in my opinion, what could have just been dealt with like a DM at the time being like, well, I had no idea. I did not actually, you know, I didn't expect a music retailer to do a sexual act on me. It was more of a, you know, my way of just saying I don't like you. Um, after after that happened,
And what did we learn?
yeah, after that happened, I think I really did. Like I feel like it was one of those things where it's like, oh, I better get way more professional. But instead, I just kind of stopped giving a fuck entirely, and I was like, but like after surviving that from the human resource and legal thing, and like having human resource people and lawyers be like, no, you were totally fine doing this. By the way, this was this. I feel like that kind of then in a weird way inspired me to go a little bit further with the channel with things like the bot video and with things that were the ADHD video where I'm literally like secretly interviewing a CEO of like a you know and things like that where it's like where it fits into journalism as long as you like follow specific rules to get the information. Anyway, point being, so now when I get those letters, I am yeah, I'm very much like if I end up losing everything over this, like if I'm not willing to risk that to some extent, then I kind of don't want to be doing it. You know, like in just with the nature of my channel, like it's not, it's just that sort of thing. But I don't know. How do you have you been sued yet? Yeah.
I did get in a lot of very heated discussions. It never really escalated to anything because, like, I knew they didn't have shit on me. But especially with stuff about like the videos I've done about sampling and why sampling is a legal nightmare with Splice and Loop Masters and big services like that. Sematics and whatever. I did two videos that did really well about things like that, and yeah, I had some very long meetings with some very angry people in high places about like you told the truth. Shut up. Like, and yeah, that's just, I don't know. It's kind of the price of admission after a certain point, though, I think, is like once you call enough attention to something, it's going to rattle some cages. And sometimes people send a scary letter. And I think the first time it happens, you're kind of like, oh, could I be in trouble? And then, you talk to an attorney or whatever, and it just becomes clear, like, oh, this is just kind of how the game goes. And you're just like, okay, if you want to do it, like, okay, it's a waste of time, but
Actually, I made a video about Akai. They've released a keyboard,
oh
and
god.
I just their initial firmware of this keyboard just it. My experience with it, it was a piece of shit, and I was honest about this when I still did gear videos. And I got an Instagram message from Andy Mack, who is a DJ, old school DJ who now like works with Akai. And in that, I recognize those words where he's like, "You may have gotten some of the things wrong in this video," which is kind of like defamation. Like it's sort of that careful. Like it felt like a lawyer was behind him while he was writing me a message on Instagram, and I immediately was like, "Well, if that like." Immediately just was like, okay, well, I'm not talking to you unless I talk to an attorney. Like blah blah blah. And he's like, no, bro, I just want to I just want to like reach out and like send you the new firmware and talk to you about this a bit more. And now like me and him are friends, but it was like I was so paranoid because I thought that I read that. I'm like, wait, he said I misrepresented something. Like I need an attorney, but really he was just like a really really nice guy who was just like, no, it's cool. Like yes, we made some mistakes here, but like also yeah, like here let's fix it. You spent money on this thing.
Well, look, I'll give you guys my final words of wisdom. I promised we'd wrapped at 5, so we're gonna have to.
Okay.
Unfortunately, fam, we're gonna have to wrap this up. But final words. What you said in regards to costs on different ways to manage situations, that's what a good lawyer can do for you. It's considering how to prevent the fire, and then if you do have a fire, how to deal with it the most efficiently and
Yeah.
cost effectively. You don't always get the cost effectively with lawyers. You don't. Okay. And so you want to make sure it's someone who's really got your back. So for example, I had someone kind of call me in a panic, this week, and it was a situation where someone is saying something and it's all kind of internal for now, but it's very damaging something. Okay. And it's all the different ways that we can deal with it. Let's send a scary cease and desist letter. Right. So we go down the list of all the different options of how we can handle this. And sometimes one of them is literally do nothing.
Yeah.
And that goes to also receiving demand letters sometimes is you don't respond. You don't even engage. But in the, problem prevention, sometimes, getting that contract or for example, terms of service.
Mhm.
So if you're selling a product, having a clear contract, which is the terms of service on your website, saying this is what you are agreeing to by using my services or purchasing my products. That contract can just save you, $20,000, and it costs you $500 for a lawyer. So just having an attorney that you trust, it takes time. It's like finding a good doctor, finding a good masseuse. It always takes time. But I just tell people, it's something worth making sure you sort out. So anyway, guys, thanks for having me part of this. Thanks for stopping here in Arizona. I'm gonna pass the mic so we can do final words, starting with you.
uh Boy, that was a tough act to follow. Final words. Yeah, diversify. Own your platform as much as you can and play the long game. It's a lot more interesting and a lot more worthwhile. Like the circling back to like the sponsor stuff and whatever, like we talked about, getting big money for this, or I got my offer got upped just because I didn't bother replying or whatever. I think the funny thing in that to point out is also like, although they did up their offer by another $800, literally the worst choice I could make is to take that sponsorship. That would just be really easy short-term money for something that's gonna look really scummy and stupid
Yeah, I
instead
hate
of
software, by the way.
yeah.
It's terrible.
And that would be the thing is like I would just be hawking a garbage product for the fact that I have a big YouTube channel. And I'm sure we all talked about this earlier, just like the ridiculous offers you get from stuff that's like not even remotely related to what you talk about, like that stupid flexi spot thing.
Yeah.
I think I had a dozen of emails from that. But yeah, I think that's the importance of all of that is like owning your platform and realizing that when you own something, you can be responsible for creating the value, and that value can go as high as you can personally drive it. And if you're willing to sell out for the really short term gain, you're often dropping a brick on your foot, and then you're going to end up having to hire someone to go, I dropped a brick on my foot and it hurt real bad. What do I do now?
Yep. And with that, I will close with transparency. I like transparency a lot. That's why my channel is a nonprofit. I can't lie to you, well, about my finances. I can't take money from somebody and then say I didn't take money from them because it'll show up on my tax filings. And what I've learned is that my channel will now have a very long terms of service agreement. Every single video in the beginning, it'll take about 45 to 50 minutes to read. Thank you for that legal advice. No, I'm joking. Thank you so much for letting us hang out in your office. There's a dog pooing. Right, right. Just,
Yep.
yep. Sorry, just that. Like, how do you not get distracted by a big old piece of dog poo right out the window? Um,
That's making me hungry, actually. We
no, no, it's basically it's commenting on my streaming and presenting skills. So with that, thanks everybody for being involved, and
Thanks for having me.
obviously watch the channels of these knuckleheads here. All right, take care, everybody. Love you. Bye.